Good afternoon, everybody. I'm just going to wait a couple more moments just to make sure everybody's got through the lobby okay. We'll be about 30 seconds and then Harry will make a start. Thanks, everybody. I think that's everybody in Harry. Brilliant. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third instalment of our partner webinar series, Accelerating the Agriculture Transition, a Bright Tide Accelerator Programme. I'm Kate Miller, Head of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships here at EcoSulis, and today I'm really excited to welcome our presenter, Bright Tide CEO, Harry Wright. The format for this hour will be roughly a 30-minute presentation from Harry and then an opportunity for questions at the end. Please can I just ask that you submit your questions through the chat function and I will pose these to Harry on your behalf. If there is time, we will also do some live Q&As at the end as well. And if you have some additional questions following the webinar, please do send them across to us and live on the chat. We'll pop our email address on at the end of the session. The session today will be recorded and emailed out to you, as they always are. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar and we look forward to receiving your questions at the end. I think that's it, Harry, and I'm just going to hand over to you now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Kate, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, where you are around the world. So, as Kate mentioned, my name is Harry Wright. I'm the CEO and founder of Bright Tide. And I'll be talking to you today a little bit about regenerative farming and our current regenerative farming accelerator program, and a bit about the sort of history as well of why we decided to really focus on regenerative farming as a primary topic. So the agenda today, I'll give a bit of a brief introduction to our work at Bright Tide. I'll then talk about what is regenerative farming and why it's important. We'll then cover the recent regenerative farming program that we actually finished 2 weeks ago, and then talk about some of the future work that we'll be doing around farming and nature. So Bright Tide is a company I set up about 2.5 years ago now. It is a sustainability consultancy company. We work with global organizations to really help them address climate, biodiversity, and regenerative challenges. And we do this through strategic consultancy work, working with major groups like EY, Nestle, and Hogan Lovells. And we also do this through running corporate programs involving entrepreneurs and innovations in the oceans and regenerative space. In fact, over the last 2.5 years, we've had quite a substantial impact with the work that we've done. We've worked now with over 30 different clients and partners from across the world. We've supported around 100 different entrepreneurs through our accelerator programs. And we're going to speak about the regenerative farming accelerator program that we've just finished today. And we've worked with about 50,000 employees from across the world through the workshops, talks, seminars, and events that we've been running. And we've now in our 5th nature program, we've just launched a new program focused on artificial intelligence and also regenerative farming solutions as well. So just a bit of background as to why, how I got into regenerative farming. My background is in law. I'm a 7-year qualified solicitor, well, coming up to 7 years. But I've always been absolutely fascinated with nature and biodiversity. And a lot of our work to start with was really focused on the blue economy and in the ocean restoration. But around 1.5 years ago, I live in Italy, just outside Naples. I spent some time in the Abruzzo region of Italy with this incredible regenerative farmer called Carmine. Carmine is from a small town called Castel del Giudice, which is on the border of the Abruzzo region with Molise in Italy. It's one of the most beautiful biodiverse places in Europe. It spans 3 different national parks and is home to some of the most extraordinary species, including a critically endangered brown bear, a growing and thriving wolf population, and also lots of exciting reptiles, amphibians, vultures, wild cats. It really is an extraordinary area which is primarily untouched. But Carmine is from this village, as I mentioned, which is one of these ancient mountain villages. And he has about an 80 hectare farm, regenerative farm. He's a very young farmer, and a lot of the young people in these mountain villages have moved out more into Milan or into Rome and other areas where there is more employment. So Carmenet is really trying to bring back these ancestral, traditional ways of farming, which have been a really important part of these communities for us for centuries. He's also a philosopher and poet. But working with him and spending time with him, and I spent a lot of time with him now over the last year and a bit on his farm. He doesn't use any fertilizers. He is completely organic, and he really works with nature. The wolves are now coming back on his land, and you can see from the image on the right the beautiful scenery here. And it really inspired me really to learn more about traditional farming, to learn more about nature-friendly farming, and this term regenerative as well. So we decided last year really to launch a regenerative farming accelerator program in October. I'll be speaking more about that later on, to really see if we can help support entrepreneurs like Carmenet and many others across the world really scale their ideas and understand what are the main barriers to scalability and challenges that they're facing. And as you know, the intensive agricultural system we have at the moment is, according to the UN Environment Programme, the primary driver of biodiversity loss across the world. And when I talk about regenerative farming today in this context, I'm focused not only on land-based farming and terrestrial biodiversity loss, but also on ocean farming and the huge impacts that we're having around overfishing, which we'll talk about a little bit later today. So just to put that context into light, to really show you the impact which agriculture and many other industries are having on biodiversity, on deforestation, I wanted to just share this video, which is from Google Earth. Now, this video shows a time lapse over a short period of time from 1984 to 2020. And it gives a bit more of a visual impact to the scale of some of the most beautiful ecosystems that we're losing around the world. You'll see from this statistic at the moment that nearly half of our world's tropical forests have been cleared or degraded for human use. And we're firstly going to dive into Bolivia, home to some of the most beautiful rainforests in the world. So you can see that over a short period of time, from 1984 to 2020, the sheer volume of what we're losing, and much of this is due to agricultural loss. We'll now jump over to Oregon in the United States, home to some of the most beautiful forests, very historic forests as well. And again, you'll see the sort of scale of what we're losing in such a short time period. And that's just in a 36-year time span. Every minute, 40 football fields are lost due to human degradation. We're now going over to Madagascar, which is one of the most unique biodiverse regions in the world, home to endemic species which are found nowhere else on Earth, but sadly is losing vast amounts of its tropical forests. And again, much of this is coming from intensive agriculture. And the impacts there on land have a dramatic impact on the sea. It is a whole-scale problem that we're facing. We'll now jump quickly back again to Bolivia. A lot of these areas, indigenous people will live, the natural custodians of our tropical forests. And those current projections are terrifying. We'll now finish up in Brazil, which there's some positive news over the last year. The deforestation rates are down. But again, a lot has been lost in the last 36 years. So why am I showing you that? Well, it really is just to give you a kind of holistic viewpoint, to show the shifting baselines of what we've lost in such a short period of time. But the food systems across the world are really at a crisis point. I just wanted to share some statistics here, which will really build on why we're focusing on a more regenerative and sustainable way of producing food. So 50% over the last 150 years, 50% of our topsoil has been lost. Around 18% of the livestock sector is responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. A third of all food is wasted, so 1.3 billion tonnes a year. It's a substantial amount. 90% of the stocks of our large predatory fish, like sharks, tuna, and marlin, have completely been disappeared over the last decades. 92% of our wild caught fish are from stocks which are overexploited and can no longer handle that pressure. 69% of the agricultural sector consumes, the agricultural sector consumes around 69% of our planet's fresh water, which is now a really scarce resource in many areas around the world. And since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the fertilizer costs have really shot up. So our food systems are at a very delicate balancing point at the moment, especially as we have a growing population, a population which really relies on food systems to be working for them. But it's just not globally that we have this problem. Here in the UK, which is where I'm from and many of you on the call today, we are one of the most nature depleted countries in the world. And I think we're one of the top 10 most nature depleted countries in the world. And you can really see really since after the Second World War, and particularly in the 1970s and 80s, that as agricultural production has intensified, the biodiversity numbers have really collapsed in the United Kingdom. And you can see there the correlation between wheat production increasing and priority species declining. And much more research has been done by this graph here from the RSPB and many other NGO groups working on this, showing the decline in farmland bird species as well, and the rapid changes in farmland management between 1970 and 1980. So we're really at a tipping point in how we address biodiversity issues at home and also globally as well. And I also wanted to speak about the shifting baselines in our marine environment as well, as you know, our programme is focused not only on land farming, but also on ocean farming. And I've been particularly interested to really learn about the history of fisheries in the UK and how they have also been dramatically changed over the last century. So our native oyster population has really collapsed as well in the UK, I think by 95%. But traditionally and historically, native oysters were a major source of protein, especially in London, and we used to have them in vast abundance. And so again, we're losing quite a lot of our own blue food, a lot of our own resources on our coastline. But really, just to really go further, Professor Callum Roberts has done a lot of really fantastic work on looking at the history of fisheries in the UK. The UK waters were once teeming with life. Around 2 centuries ago, we would have vast shoals of herring that would cover thousands of square kilometres that used to spawn around our coastlines each year. Contemporary accounts have really described this breathtaking wildlife phenomenon that has really not been seen around the UK since the 1930s. In fact, it was the Irish writer and poet Oliver Goldsmith who once wrote that the whole water seems alive and is so black with them to a great distance that the numbers seem inexhaustible. So the herring shoals were accompanied by pods of fin and sperm whales, mackerel and fresher sharks, porpoises and giant bluefin tuna. So we used to have a teeming fisheries industry. But really, the damage, according to Henry Dimby in the UK National Food Strategy, has really come from bottom trawling, especially since the 1890s when fossil fuel power bottom trawling really began around the UK coastline. And since then, we've seen a staggering decline in overall fish abundance. Cod landings have declined by 87%, hake by 95%, and halibut around 99.8%. So to put that in perspective, if you were in the 1830s and you were on a small fishing vessel around the Dogger Bank, you could catch around a ton of halibut per day. Today, all fishing around the same area, you can only catch around 2 tons of halibut a year. So what you could catch per day in 2 days in the 1830s, you can only now catch per year. So it really shows you those shifting baselines in terms of our biodiversity abundance, and species diversity. And the question is, where are we really going to be in another 100 years? So to really mitigate against biodiversity loss and also in the way we produce and look after our food systems, regenerative farming could be a possible answer. I'm not saying that it's the only answer, But if there is a way to farm more sustainably, more nature friendly, and in a way which can also generate new potential revenue streams for farmers in time to come, then it could be a way to ensure that we have a sustainable food security for generations to come. There are many statistics on regen farming. There is no real set definition for it, but there are evidence to suggest that regen farming on just 40% of the world's croplands could save around 600 million tons of emissions. That pollinators, regen farming using different types of cover crops and providing habitat for pollinators could really enable them to continue to help us with our global food system. I think 75% of our crop system depends on pollinators to flourish. And oysters as well. As we mentioned, the native oyster population has collapsed around the UK, but there are now some fantastic efforts to both rewild and restore oysters to our waters. They are magnificent species, massive ecosystem service benefits. They can filtrate around 200 litres of water per day, and that's from the fantastic company Oyster Heaven. They also can generate and harbour marine biodiversity around our shorelines as well, and they're also rather tasty to eat. So once again, perhaps oysters could become a primary source of protein for the UK population if we can restore and regenerate them. So what is land-based regenerative farming? So the definition, I guess, from the Climate Reality Project, even though I don't think there is an agreed definition on exactly what regenerative farming is a system of farming principles and practices that seeks to rehabilitate and enhance the entire ecosystem of the farm. Expected outcomes will include generating and building soils and soil fertility, increasing water per location, retention and safe water runoff, increasing biodiversity and ecosystem health, and reducing carbon emissions involved in agriculture to enable a net carbon sequestration. And Groundswell has 5 principles of regenerative agriculture that you can see on this infographic on the left. Everything from increasing crop rotation and diversity to livestock integration, to minimalizing soil disturbance and protecting the soil surface, and also to maintaining living roots by maintaining soil integrity, improving water filtration, capturing carbon through the soil, and really improving soil health as well. And we also focus on ocean farming, and I'll explain the reason why we decided to focus both on ocean and land farming. As we've seen the collapse really mainly due to intensive trawling around the UK coastline, regenerative ocean farming is farming food in a way which can restore and regenerate the marine ecology that we have around the UK, but also provide and deliver other environmental and ecosystem benefits, such as sequestering carbon and improving water filtration, water quality. And we have here on the diagram on the right, a diagram of integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, which is using different methods for blue food, such as seaweed and kelp. And we've worked with many of the seaweed and kelp farming ventures across the UK, mussels and scallops, oysters and clams, and really having this regenerative way of producing blue food, which can bring back marine biodiversity, can help sequester carbon, and can really provide those additional ecosystem benefits. And again, you can see here, just from some of the images, some of the visual benefits from farming in a more sustainably and nature-friendly way. And I really think this is a great opportunity to look at how we're improving the biodiversity in the UK and also globally. So when we focused on the programme, and this is our sort of 4th programme that we've run, we wanted to really address issues that are happening on land and also in the ocean. A lot of our work has really been focused on marine conservation and marine restoration. And what we notice is that a lot of the impacts of things like survivability rates of seagrass are really impacted through what's happening on land. So things like nitrogen runoff, different kinds of pollution coming from on land, which is due to agriculture and industry, is really impacting marine ecosystems and marine ecology. It's putting more stress, especially if you look at globally, on coral reef bleaching mortality rates. It's also helping to create more algae blooms, which are having a devastating impact on coastal communities globally, and is increasing sedimentation and die-offs within marine ecosystems. So if we really wanted to truly address these issues, we have to, I think, take this whole-scale approach by focusing on improving systems on land and also systems in the ocean, because they are so interconnected. And I guess the reason why I'm so fascinated with oceans is that I see our blue economy as a huge opportunity to provide sustainable food for the billions of people that rely on fish as their main source of protein, but also to look at new potential nature markets around blue natural capital, looking at things in the future around marine net gain, marine credits, and really thinking how we can restore and regenerate marine ecosystems across the world, and especially here in the UK. So our regenerative farming accelerator program really aimed to support entrepreneurs that have regenerative farming ventures, both on land and in the ocean, through a number of different ways. We launched the application process globally for entrepreneurs in October last year. We had about 150 applications from such a diverse audience from 26 different countries. It was quite extraordinary. And the way we run our programs is that we have an application process on our website. You can go onto our website, you can apply, you fill in a Google form. We then review all of the applications once we have them in place. We then go through a quite stringent application and due diligence process. We hosted about 50 different interviews in December of last year. And then we managed to make a final selection of 20 entrepreneurs, 10 which would focus on land farming and 10 which would focus on ocean farming. The program was supported by 9 different organizations, including EcoSolus and Credit Nature, which we're extremely grateful for. And in fact, EcoSolus and Credit Nature were on our second Blue Carbon Accelerator program. So it's been really fantastic to work with Kane, Kate and Neil and the team who are doing extraordinary things. We also worked with Hogan Lovells and Kennedy's Law, so 2 big law firms, which were really interested in supporting these entrepreneurs and learning more about regenerative farming. We worked with Muzinich & Co, which is a private wealth bank, and also with Cabman Capital Group, Next Energy Group, Boatfolk and Bankers for Net Zero. So we had this really broad coalition of private sector organizations and investment groups which supported the program. And one of the aims of the program really is to connect directly those entrepreneurs working on these solutions directly to potential new networks, potential new customers, and hopefully potential ways in which they can seek investment. So the idea is that we give the entrepreneurs a platform. We hosted the regenerative farming program at the House of Commons, which was a huge privilege in March earlier this year. We had Minister Mark Spencer who spoke, Sally Ann Hart MP, who's been hugely generous with her time and the work on the Leading the Ocean all-party parliamentary group. And we also offered each of the entrepreneurs the opportunity to speak at the House of Commons as well, and to network. We had about 120 people there. It was a really nice way to launch the program. We also had a second event at Hogan Lovells in Chancery Lane, which was another extraordinary way for the entrepreneurs to present the work that they're doing. And we had the Shadow Climate Minister, Kerry McCarthy MP, speak there. It was really great to also have that access to the networks within government and within policy. And we then launched an 8-week virtual program. And I'll be speaking more about the type of support that we offer to the entrepreneurs. So I used to work as a lawyer for social enterprises and also have done a lot of work in working with entrepreneurs. And one of the things I noticed in the UK, where I think we're getting a lot better at now, is that there was a lot of support out there for entrepreneurs focused on things like healthcare and fintech and blockchain technology. But those entrepreneurs that were working on nature and biodiversity initiatives, there wasn't quite that same level of support. So I set up Bright Tide really as a part of our mission is to support those entrepreneurs that are developing new regenerative solutions to environmental issues and to help support them with challenges that they're facing. So part of the program as well is offering a vast array of different technical support, free support. We don't charge the entrepreneurs, it's free for them to come on the program. We don't take any equity like other accelerator programs do, and we offer them, with the help of our partners who join the program, a vast array of different technical support and really finding out what are those key barriers to scalability and some of the issues that they're facing. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And you can see here just some of the images from those events I mentioned. The bottom left is the launch event at the House of Commons, which was an extraordinary success. The bottom right image there was our launch event at Hogan Lovells, and you can see some of the entrepreneurs there next to Kerry McCarthy MP there. In the top left, the day after, we hosted a really great roundtable morning breakfast event with Kennedy's Law, which is one of the leading insurance firms. And 8 of the entrepreneurs came and really heard from them directly, how can the insurance sector really help with the work they're doing to support them and grow and scale, and can insurance also help them with some of the issues they're facing. And that's been really fascinating to learn more about how industry and private sector groups can really be connected in the work that they're doing. And in the top right, I'm there with Kelly from Agreed Earth, Marcella from Tierra Foods, Conrad from Chirrup, and Yannick from Seawater Solutions. We had a really great wide-ranging discussion as well with the different entrepreneurs. And the great thing about the program is that we're really directly connecting different sections of entrepreneurship together as well. So a lot of the ocean entrepreneurs really want to work with farmers on land. Things like seaweed biostimulants, which can replace chemical fertilizers. There are great ways in which we can connect the entrepreneurs and also their ecosystems together. So they can work together on things like pilot projects, on new commercial opportunities, and really work together and be there as peers to support one another as well. So there were many different aims of the program. One was to really work with our private sector partners to really educate them, raise awareness about these different initiatives and how they, as a large organization, can really support innovation in the regenerative sector. For the entrepreneurs, it was a great opportunity for them to meet our private sector partners, to have the opportunity to speak with them, to also learn about how their services can help these huge organizations on their own nature positive journeys and their own net zero commitments. So there was a huge amount of shared learning and knowledge and experience, which we shared through the program. The 8-week virtual program had over 40 hours of support, so about 1 to 3 hours of support per week. We had so many different seminars, from the Zoological Society of London to working with Unilever on hosting a workshop, to EcoSulis, and all of the partners provided their own insights and experience as well to the group. We also really wanted to understand what are these main barriers to scalability that the entrepreneurs are facing, because we're only really going to be able to address these issues holistically if we can truly understand what are those barriers, but what are the solutions. How can the finance sector, the legal sector, policy really help to scale these huge challenges, environmental challenges that we're facing? We have the solutions, but it's really how we scale them to really have maximum impact. This pro bono support, I think, was exceptionally valuable to the entrepreneurs, especially around the investment readiness sessions. We had a pro bono legal workshop with Hogan Lovells, which we hosted just 2 weeks ago, and a great event at Barclays Bank as well in Canary Wharf. Part of the program I'm really proud of as well is really trying to build those bridges with policymakers and with civil service. And I know a number of you on the call here are from civil service. And part of what our mission is, I really want to try and build these bridges with civil service, the government and the private sector, because I think there's a really great opportunity to collaborate, cross-collaborate between public and private sectors and entrepreneurship as well, especially as the challenges around net zero commitments will only become more stringent and more tough. So collaborating is just a really great way of really accelerating these sustainability solutions. And part of the work we do is all about education and raising awareness. It's about providing a platform to these entrepreneurs and the work that they're doing. These are extraordinary individuals globally, and we're really proud to be supporting the work that they're doing and helping to connect them with new potential customers as well. So here were the 20 ventures. I will quickly take you through them, just have a quick look at time. We had an extraordinary turnout, as I mentioned, and it was a really tough. Originally, we were meant to have only 10 ventures, and I became, I guess I'm a bit too nice, so I extended that to 20 in the end, but we could have taken at least 40 of them through, maybe even more. So just quickly going through them, we have at the top left, Gentle Farming, a amazing regenerative farmer called Thomas Gent. He comes from a family-based farm, which they have around 2,000 acres, I think. They've been farming regeneratively for a long time, doing some really great work with innovation. Thomas is a very young but enthusiastic and a really great person in demonstrating that regen farming can work. Seawater Solutions are doing some really great work on both preserving and restoring blue carbon habitats, coastal habitats around the globe, but also in looking at salination farming. So how seawater farming can be used and looking at different types of aquaculture, restoring ecosystems. So have a look at their website. It's really exciting work. Agreed Earth is a amazing organization run by Kelly Price. She's doing some great work on helping farmers reduce nitrogen usage on their land, and also working with private sector and financial groups using satellite-based technology and artificial intelligence to really reduce nitrogen usage for farmers, which is, as you know, having an impact on both food, on our ecosystems and biodiversity as well. Tierra Foods is an amazing lady called Marcella, who is working both in the UK and in Mexico, looking to help indigenous communities with agroforestry. She's now developing a new MRV method to help farmers and the private sector really monitor carbon usage and biodiversity usage in agriculture. Sea Ventures, an amazing lady called Faith, who's based in Kenya. She's has really created a really cool circular business where she's looking at the fish waste coming out of the Mombasa port, where I think around 65% of the fish is actually thrown away, and she's turning that fish waste into fertilizer, also into animal and chicken feed. So she's got a really great circular business model there, which, you know, discarded fish waste, which would be thrown away, and using that to put into valuable new regenerative products. Atlantic Mariculture is a fantastic seaweed farm up in Scotland, doing great work on both the technology side and scalability of kelp farming, but also, you know, farming kelp for food consumption, biostimulants and other potential markets. Acquit is a organization based in Chile, an amazing female entrepreneur called Daniela. She's really working at fish farming. So she's helping to reduce the usage of vaccinations, hormonal treatments in fish, and is all about antibiotic resistance as well. She is extraordinary, doing some amazing work. Pine Island Redfish is a female founder called Megan, based out in Pine Island in Florida. I'll be covering them in a minute, so I won't go into too much detail. Ficostera is a Spanish seaweed farm. They've been having some extraordinary success on using seaweed as potential replacement for fertilizer and improving soil health. 360 Aquaculture is set up in Wales. They're creating the first on-land sustainable shrimp farm. So looking at how they can farm shrimps sustainably. Shrimp farming is having a massive impact on mangrove ecosystems across Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Is one of the leading causes actually for the destruction of mangroves. So how we can really sustainably farm them in a way for future generations is really important. The Oyster Restoration Company is an amazing organization. They're focused on restoring and commercially farming oysters around the UK. As I mentioned, we've lost, I think, 95% of the native oyster population around the UK. Chirrup AI, which is this wonderful bird logo that they have, amazing group. They have a small box which is using artificial intelligence to pick up bird song. So the box can be placed for farmers on farms. They work with food-based companies to help monitor biodiversity on farmland. And using artificial intelligence, they can pick up the sounds of birds and automatically identify them. But they're also working as well how that is an indicator for ecosystem health and other species as well. Oli Blue is a really great seaweed farm based in Kenya. Going to cover them shortly. Regeneration are a French-based company doing amazing work with farmers on carbon credits. Seaweed Cafe is, I really love this group. They're based out in Tanzania. They train women seaweed farmers, and again, looking to utilize seaweed farming for a number of different products. Algapelago is the England's biggest seaweed farm, doing brilliant work on biostimulants, and they also have, you need to check out their Blue Forest program, which is all around the biodiversity carbon links to kelp farming and multi-tropic aquaculture. Nunwell Home Farm are two female farmers on the Isle of Wight. They're doing some really great work over there on regenerative farming. New Foundation Farms, a really very inspirational group. They've just acquired a new farm in Devon, doing some really radical work on trying to create a new regenerative way of looking at food in the UK. Wild Farmed, I'll be covering them in a minute, and Afro Valley Farm are based out in Ethiopia using blockchain technology to help digitalize and commoditize farming work that's going on there. So quickly, just to take you through a few more case studies of the ventures we had on the group. You may have seen the work of Wild Farmed and Andy Cato. He spoke 2 weeks ago at our Barclays event, our pitch event. He used to be in Groove Armada, sold his music rights as one of the co-founders of Groove Armada, became a regenerative farmer in France, and over the last, I think, decade has really learned so much about a new type of farming and routes to market for crops which can prioritize soil health and improve biodiversity. So through Wild Farms, and you may have seen him on Clarkson's farm recently, working with Jeremy on some of the work there, they've created their own brand, which is flour. They're now in Marks and Spencer's and in Waitrose, their own bread, which they've committed. And what they do is they pay farmers a premium to produce food, flour and other different types of crops using their certification, using their method. They pay farmers a premium for that, and then they upsell the produce that they collect to supermarkets. So it's a really transparent way of farming, and they're having some huge success in both increasing biodiversity, carbon, waterways, and definitely go check out their work. Pine Island Redfish is a really exciting venture. They're based on a small island called Pine Island, which is in the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Florida. They're trying to bring back the red barren fish, which is actually gone extinct and is only farmed in a few different areas around the world. So they have created a sustainable fish farm, which pairs sustainability and RAS technology to produce redfish, which is the red drum. And what they also have is a really nice way of repurposing the waste nutrients from the RAS system into growing red mangroves on the farm as well. So they have a really circular model, not only bringing back an endemic species and producing it in a sustainable way, but also the waste nutrients that come from that are recycled into growing carbon, mangroves, which store carbon. So go check out the work she's doing. Ole Blue is an amazing entrepreneur based out in South Africa and in Kenya. She's doing some great work with farmers in Africa. So using organic seaweed fertilizer again to help increase yields, to buy seaweed from seaweed farmers for again a more premium price, and is using it and trialing it with around 50 farmers at the moment to see how it can really support small-scale farmers in Africa growing food more in a more regenerative, environmentally friendly way. And as I mentioned, Chirp AI as well, and you can see here the box which they have on you can sort of tie it to a post on farms. It's about the size of an iPhone. They use artificial intelligence to give you a really good overview of which bird species are on the farm, and is a really affordable, farmer-friendly way to measure biodiversity. And this is really important with all of the new farming incentives and financial incentives, from biodiversity net gain to the SFI and other the ELM schemes and many other incentives, private sector, carbon credits, biodiversity credits as well. This is a great way in which both farmers and the private sector can really measure baseline and show that uplift in biodiversity as well. So quickly, just talk about some of the main challenges and potential solutions that we really became aware of through the programme. The first one was around investment. There was at this time, a real lack of financing for these entrepreneurs developing innovative solutions. There are opportunities through things like Innovate UK, and some VC groups are really working on that. But one of the conclusions was, is venture capital actually the right form of finance for a lot of these entrepreneurs, especially those which are quite capex heavy up front? And we've had some really interesting discussions. Blended finance seemed to be a potential solution for that, combined with grant financing as well. So really focusing on new blended routes of financing to help finance, get these entrepreneurs off the ground, get their infrastructure set up, and then look at ways in which they, over time, will then develop their routes to market, and then the revenue and the return will come. We also heard from a lot of the female founders. Actually, there was they faced a lot of issues around both being solo founders and also in the amount of investment going to female founders, and that's something which I was really passionate about. We made 50% of the cohort female led, and also with 4 female founders in Africa, trying to really highlight and support their work they're doing. So there's a real great opportunity to further work on gender lens investing, working with VC and investment groups to ensure a percentage of their investment does go to female and diverse led founders. And I'll talk about a little outcome which some of the founders worked on through the program. What we did notice is that there is around networking as well, a huge education gap and lack of collaboration between both private sector, big private sector groups which are doing, which have huge value chains which impact farming both on land and in the ocean, government and policy, and also the complexity of how these systems work, getting introductions to the right person in these gigantic organizations, the difficulty that some of the entrepreneurs have had in working with them, the bureaucracy involved, the amount of time it takes to develop those relationships. So hopefully through the work we've done with the networking sessions and really acting as that conduit, we're hoping to create more closer links, speed up and streamline that process for entrepreneurship and ventures to really understand how they can work together. It's a real challenge. It's not a challenge to be underestimated. I feel it's an overwhelming challenge for sustainability and ESG teams, just on meeting some of these very tight targets around 2030 on net zero, and now the TNFD and the focus on nature and biodiversity. So there is a massive amount of work that our team can do to support both private sector groups and the entrepreneurs as well, to see how this big system fits together. And really around education and growth as well. So really helping as I mentioned, really on the current baseline that we have on biodiversity and nature in the UK, how can we really help improve that through some of the work that these regenerative farming ventures are doing? And there's a lot more work to be done on the education side of things as well, and also on reducing technology costs for things like baselining, biodiversity monitoring, and helping farmers. I think one of the great things as well was really learning about the challenges that farmers are facing. And I don't think we really appreciate how amazing farmers are, and the real struggles that they faced over the last couple of years, especially coming out of COVID, and the pressure on them as well to change the practices, who's going to finance that, and how can we help farmers as well really make that transition to a regenerative way. But it has to be led by farmers, and I think we need to bring farmers much more into these discussions and give them a platform as well, as they are the custodians of the land and know better than all of us really on how to move forward on this. So the impact of the programme has been quite significant. We only finished 2 weeks ago, so we're really still condensing everything and really bringing everything in. We're currently working on our impact report. The knowledge building was significant. We had global experts, Kane from Ian Redmond to Vincent Dumersdale. As I mentioned, Kerry McCarthy, we had the minister speak. We covered a huge amount of topics throughout the programme with our private sector partners, and really covered a lot of topics around biodiversity monitoring, information sharing, and peer-to-peer learning as well within the group on education. And I hope really through the events that we've been running, we've had around 350 attendees through the free networking events we did from different interdisciplinary backgrounds, has really helped to bring people outside of the tent. That we I'm at risk really, I think sometimes, that people working on nature and biodiversity are in a bubble. And how can we bring an asset manager or a pension fund or someone who is, this is totally new for them, lawyers and everyone, how do we bring them into the bubble? And I think our programs are an excellent introductory way of really highlighting, these huge challenges that we face, but also look, we have all these different solutions in front of us, and this is the roadmap. This is how we can lead the way for a more nature positive future. So enhancing collaboration was really at the heart of what we're doing. It's been great to work with Kennedy's and on the insurance aspect as well. There is so much work to be done there within the insurance sector, and they are really on top of this. I mean, it's been quite reassuring to see the work that insurers are starting to do around parametric insurance policies, but really looking at this from a risk perspective. And I think risk is something as well we don't talk about enough. I know the TNFD is doing a great job on that. And I think the quote is that over half of the global economy is highly dependent on nature for its future survival. So the shock waves that are coming if we continue to allow biodiversity to collapse to the global economy are significant. It was the Green Finance Institute, I think a couple of weeks ago, that had a new report showing that just in the UK, biodiversity decline could take as much as 12% off our GDP. And if you compare that to COVID, that was 11% damage, and the financial crisis was 8%. So economic collapse is a possibility if we continue to destroy our ecosystems and our biodiversity, combined with the climate systemic risks, which are also coming. So there is a duty on organizations to really start thinking about how they can look at their value chain. How do they reduce their dependency on nature? And how do they change those unsustainable practices to more regenerative and sustainable practices? And that is a risk and compliance issue as far as I'm concerned as well. So the program really highlights that. We run, specific skill sets. We ran a great webinar on biodiversity net gain, and we really try and build that story as well. We had a focus on female founders, which was great. And a couple of the female founders now are hoping to launch a new initiative. They met during the program to get VCs in aquaculture to commit to 50% of their investments to women-led founders. And we also provided, as I mentioned, a vast array of pro bono and free support to the entrepreneurs as well. We had a number of workshops from different groups. Unilever ran a fantastic workshop on how they work with entrepreneurs, both on farming and ocean farming. As I mentioned, the workshops of both Kennedy's Law and Hogan Lovells. And we also had a number of experts provide talks around investment. So this fantastic guy called Kuhn, who runs one of the leading podcasts and courses on regenerative agriculture and finance, led a great webinar on investment trends in regenerative farming. We work with boat folk who are part of the group, who have owned a lot of the marinas around the UK and also have restaurants. So they've been having a number of discussions with some of the farming ventures about how they can connect their produce into their restaurants, which is really exciting. The Conservative Environment Network provided an open forum where they wanted to learn about what were some of the main barriers to the blue economy and facing ocean ventures in the UK from a policy perspective. We've also had many other discussions in Parliament on some of these issues, and just inspirational stories like Ecosoulis. Kane and Susie gave a fantastic webinar on the journey which Ecosoulis has had, and I think a lot of the entrepreneurs really related to that. But Cabman Capital Group gave a fantastic investment readiness session. We also have representatives from Bankers for Net Zero. Muzinich and Co spoke about some of the higher level corporate sustainability disclosure rules and gave a really fantastic seminar to the ventures on where they fit in with huge regulatory changes, both in the European Commission, EU, and here in the UK. And as these more regulatory pressure is put on private sector groups to, transform their value chain to be more sustainable, where do the entrepreneurs sit in this sort of systems change? And Hogan Lovells gave a really fantastic legal workshop. Barclays also hosted us for our pitch event, and you can see in the top right there, we did that 2 weeks ago today. We had Andy come down and speak. When we booked the day, I didn't realize that it was on the bank holiday Friday, but we still had about 120 people come, which was kind of extraordinary for a Friday in Canary Wharf on a bank holiday weekend. And it was just amazing. We had 14 of the ventures pitch. They had around 2.5 minutes to pitch. And the feedback has been brilliant from the event. And you can see we had a big focus as well on storytelling. So one of our development partners, Alex Searle, came and gave 2 sessions on how the entrepreneurs can better tell their story. We work closely with Laura from Owner Ocean, who's been a really great help in doing the marketing and the comms for the program and highlighting some of the stories from the entrepreneurs. and she gave a really great session with the ventures on pitching and helping to improve their messaging. And you can see there in the top left the session from EcoSulis. And this is some of the, just from 2 weeks ago, some of the pitches from some of the groups on the programme. And you can see we like to do these group photos. We had everyone there from the COP26 education person from all across the private sector, from senior people at Nestle, Unilever, to the finance industry, VC groups, vast amounts of investors there, and lots of people from the policy side as well. So it was a really great turnout and a great way to build connections through the group. So I realise I'm overrunning here. So I just wanted to plug the last 2 programs quickly that we're focused on. We're now moving into creating a new collective for entrepreneurship and private sector groups interested in artificial intelligence and sustainability, called Sustain.ai Collective. We'll be launching that in October. And this is a really exciting way to look at innovation technology. We're also launching a, building on the work we've done in regenerative farming, a new Turning the Tide regenerative farming programme, which is going to be a much more in-depth programme focused on supporting entrepreneurship and building a coalition of private sector groups, particularly in the UK, to see how we can really together move the dial forward and move towards a more regenerative future. So this is going to be our most ambitious programme to date. We've already working with Hogan Lovells on it, and we're really hoping to build a broad coalition of private sector groups. So if you're interested in learning more, please do get in touch with me. And I just want to say thank you so much for listening. This image here is of the blue marble, which was taken in the 1970s by the Apollo astronauts as they made their way out of Earth. First image of Earth that we have seen. And I really hope we can look back in 20, 30 years to see an Earth as beautiful and as green as this one here. And we can really work together for a more regenerative future. So very happy to answer any questions. I apologise, Kate, if I've gone over the time limit there.
That's all right, Harry, no problem. We're a little bit late starting anyway, so I think you were just about on time. Obviously, mindful of, as you said, we are a little bit over time in terms of the slot we've got booked, and I appreciate some people may need to jump off for other meetings, etc. But if you have time, Harry, would you be happy with just taking a couple of questions now, if you've got the time to do so?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's completely fine.
I've had a few come in. I'm just trying to scroll down and find them. So, question here from Rebecca. So it's acknowledged that shifting baseline syndrome is one of the most pernicious obstacles to raising awareness of biodiversity decline. What are your thoughts around ways in which the general population and non-scientists / those who don't work in the natural world can help to tackle it?
Yeah, no, really great question, and agree. I want to just bring because I think we don't talk about, especially on the marine side, what we used to have. I think there is a number of different ways. I think education is a really great way of raising awareness about the solutions, and that's why we're very much focused on the solution side through the ventures that we work with. Hosting open days, regenerative farms, and opening those up for the general public. I think there is a huge opportunity to work with more inner city communities as well, broadening out diversity and inclusion as well around nature and education. I think we've all seen the value of having green spaces over COVID and the links to health and how much everyone appreciated being in open spaces. So there's a lot of links, I think, to food poverty, nutrition, mental health, health as a whole, to really get more people, especially young people as well, out into the open to really experience nature and to see those benefits. The problem with the marine environments, as you know, is that a lot of the great the beauty that we have is underwater is not as visible. And even though we're an island, I think there's a really great opportunity to much more raise awareness about our marine ecosystems. So the Ocean Conservation Trust is an NGO, Blue Marine Foundation, doing extraordinary work on public engagement. They've also got the Plymouth Aquarium, which is doing some really great work. So there is some great work that's been doing, but I think also having an initiative led by governments and getting politicians on board to speak about these issues is also another really good way of building that education gap.
Yeah, completely agree, Harry. I think the collaboration education pieces are just so important, aren't they? Question here from Stephanie. Hi, what is your opinion is our biggest barrier to getting the UK to 40% regen, and how long do you think it would take if we committed? With the UK being 70% plus agricultural land, it seems a no-brainer. Thank you.
No, totally, and I think that's the big opportunity in the UK. And I think there needs to be a much more open dialogue, I think, with farmers. You know, they're under a lot of pressure, as I mentioned, and really creating. We're starting to have the policy frameworks which are coming through, but it's how do we unlock, instead of just public finance, and as you've been hearing from the election, public finances are really squeezed. So how can we unlock private sector markets to really finance the transition finance which farmers need to pay for the regenerative practices that we have? So there's the transition finance piece, I think, which is really needed, but there's also the education part in the private sector as well, especially on those groups which have a value chain in agricultural land, both on the land side and in the ocean side. So I think for a lot of the work we do is really around those, bridging the gaps between those different sectors, educating, and really, again, being visible of the benefits of looking at regen farming, for example. So transition finance, I say, is probably the most important thing to focus on.
Brilliant, thanks, Harry. Probably just one more, I think, as few people are starting to drop off now. If you had the chance to put one phrase above regenerative farming on every billboard in every city in the world, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say, I think a healthy food systems is a really great way, because regenerative is still a wide encouraging term, but I'm really fascinated into links with food poverty, food nutrition, and healthy food, healthy planet. So I think the word healthy really is a great way of symbolizing that. We're trying to create a more healthy planet for biodiversity and nature, but also a more healthy planet for ourselves, for our economy, and reducing the strain on the NHS through unhealthy, high sugar food that we have, especially in the UK. I think 80% of the food is if you look at the Hemorrhoid Dimby food transition report, there's some great statistics on there around food nutrition and food poverty. So yeah, I think healthy is a good way of describing it.
Brilliant, thanks, Harry. We've got a couple of additional questions on there, but what I'll do, I think I'll just pose those to you separately, Harry, and we'll kind of get some answers across, and a couple of people that are keen to kind of link up with you as well, and I've got their contact details, so I'll share that with you. So yeah, I'll just kind of wrap up our webinar for today. Just a reminder, obviously, that we've recorded the session today, and I'll be sending that out to you early next week. Potentially you should get one through Teams anyway, but I like to send a nice edited version as a marketer, obviously, post event. But if you do have any questions, whether it comes about over the weekend or next week, please do feel free to drop us an email, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can. Have a great afternoon, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed the session, and hopefully we'll see you all soon at the next webinar series. And thanks, Harry.
Thank you so much for your time, everyone, and I'm really happy to chat with everyone as well if you'd like to find out more.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Harry. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.